The next one is a quote from John Steinbeck. He was the guy who wrote The Grapes of Wrath, among other great books. I haven't read it, but from what I've read about it, it's pretty amazing. I think I saw the movie years ago. Anyway, he says, and now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. Which is really brings up this whole thing of like, people really get into this whole thing about being perfect. And I think it's very troublesome because you can get it caught up in like trying to be perfect. And then kind of, people go, oh, perfection is, who was it? I think it was Salvador Dali. It was one of his quotes is like, don't worry about perfection. You'll never get there. And then there was some other bit to it as well. Anyway, and then there are other people who are like, well, we're all flawed beings. We're all flawed. And they sort of, that's their thing. They arrive at, we're all flawed. And then there's other people who are like arrive at they're all perfect. And then some people get megalomaniac about it and egotistical about it and like, I'm perfect, everything you do is right. And the thing is like, from as far as I can see, we're both. Like at our core, we are perfect for sure. At the center of us, we're all perfect. But then we all have unconsciousness. And our unconsciousness, you could say, makes us flawed. But we're not flawed in our inner nature, who we are, like the essence of who we are. But we've got work to do here, meaning we've got all this unconsciousness to refine. And if you conflate those two things, then you get a mess. You get a messy, like confusing, I'm flawed, but then I'm not, but then I am. Whereas when you can see the two things clearly and you can see this is my unconsciousness, this is what I'm working through, like everybody is, and everybody's got it, and everybody's working through stuff, then you can kind of see the separation. So you're not so attached to your unconsciousness as well. It's not all part of one big mess. It's like, well, that's my unconsciousness, and if I do things, hurt people or whatever, then it's much easier for me to make amends and apologize and to laugh at myself and the ridiculousness of unconsciousness and processing it. But if the two are on top of each other, it's very hard to do that. So this thing is helpful because it's like now that you're no longer perfect, meaning you're not trying to be, you're not trying to deny your unconsciousness, because that's kind of what the idea of being perfect is it's a denial of, well, I've got unconsciousness. Because if you fully go into that, then it will bite you because you won't be aware of it. Whereas if you're kind of, and when he's saying like now that you no longer have to be perfect, you can be good. Like that's sort of speaking to your own fundamental goodness, which your unconsciousness would make you suffer a bit by projecting this idea of perfection. Like there's this ideal version of you, which it kind of knows in your heart that there is a purity to you, but it kind of goes, yeah, so that means you should never make a mistake, you should never be cruel, never say the wrong thing, never hurt anybody, never do any of that stuff, which of course we all do. We all have our unconsciousness. And part of the unconsciousness is twisting this kind of self-reflection into this ideal of perfection, which will crucify you. You'll just never be who you are all the time, because for as long as you're alive, you're still processing your unconsciousness. So I think once you can see those two things, and you can kind of let go of the idea of perfection and the idea of just being good, it's sort of easier, isn't it? It's a bit like, oh yeah, I can be good, I can accept the good, it's okay, everything is all right. Like often the big extremes of emotion, like the perfection, the exquisite excellence of love and beauty, they're big things where it's just ordinary stuff like I'm just okay. I think that's a much more profound statement than I'm perfect. I'm just okay. It's okay it's okay for me to be happy. It's okay for me to be loved. It's not like I deserve love or any of that kind of stuff. Or when love comes, like, oh my God, thank you for loving me. It's just like, it's okay for me to be loved. It's okay for me to have all the good things. These are all fine. if it's, you know, and when it's just said in a very ordinary way, I think it's much more powerful, you know. So it's a lovely quote. Good old John Steinbeck. Now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good.